Ambassador, first of all, it's your, I think, first interview in India. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to ANI. And we look forward for more such interviews in future. So I just start my interview with you with a question. How do you look at India-Israel relationship at the moment, and where do you see them going in several sectors, whether it is business, whether it is defense cooperation, whether it is high technology? Can you give us a sense of what is your understanding of relationship?
Well, Naveen, thank you very much, first of all, for this interview. I'm thrilled to be here in India. This is something that I've been aspiring to do, and I'm thankful for my government for giving me this great assignment. This is an amazing relationship. India and Israel are strategic partners, and we are just untapping the huge potential we have in this relationship. We've seen a trajectory of achievements when it comes to meeting our mutual interest. It started with a very discreet defense cooperation that now has evolved into a multi-billion-dollar business that we are getting it into the next stage, because we are now have entered the era of Make in India, and our industry had to adapt to that. We had last month a visit of a senior figure from our defense establishment, and we had intensive talks in which we basically agreed on the scheme on how to move forward. So I'm sure that Israel will continue to be a great partner of India, an essential element to both creating the capabilities that India needs for the future, and also some of the capabilities that Israel needs in the future. Because, you know, India is going to be one of the hubs, the world hubs of manufacturing, both in the civilian sphere and the military sphere. And Israel, in order to secure its supply chain, will definitely lean on India.
Can you give us a ballpark sense of how much investment or how much, you said there's a huge potential. Can you give us a sense of what will be the quantity and quantum in coming years?
Yeah. So first of all, we have the things that we already have, this incredible defense cooperation that will continue in the industrial aspect and other aspects. Then we have the very good agricultural cooperation and water sector cooperation with 35 excellence centers and a lot of Israeli companies, global Israeli companies working here with the agricultural sector. In the innovation sector, we are about to announce in the coming days a major multi-billion-dollar investment in this country by an Israeli company. And there is a new sector that we want to introduce. And this was the subject of discussions that we had in the coming 2 weeks since I arrived here during the visit of our Director General of our Foreign Ministry, and also our Transportation Minister that came here last week, Mir Regev. What we want to do is to attract Indian infrastructure companies to come and participate in international infrastructure tenders in Israel. We are going to invest $35 billion in the next 5 years in infrastructure projects in Israel. That means that we need to build a new metro for the Tel Aviv area, we have to build a new airport and many other things, and we are interested in diversifying companies from around the world that will build these projects. Now, India has built already 1,000 kilometers of metro. India is the third largest country when it comes to metro build-up capability, and we need the Indian companies and the Indian workforce in Israel. So what we have agreed in our conversations with the Indian government is that we are going to get a POC that is going to work with us in this regard, and we're going to bring here the relevant decision makers for Israel to do a roadshow here and actually offer these projects to Indian companies. So you can see that in these 4 realms we are advancing, and there are many other fields in which we want to cooperate, not just economic, but also social. You know, we as democracies, we share values. We share values of democracy, freedom, of moderation, of inclusion. You know, Israel and India are among the most progressive countries when it comes to trying to empower women. We've seen the initiatives of Prime Minister Modi that are really amazing. And Israel is a global pioneer in things like accessibility, like dealing with people with disabilities. And these are things that we want to plan to do together with our Indian partners.
Master, before moving to the strategic side of the relationship, I want to put one more question regarding business. Like, are you also expecting big contribution from Israel or India on the semiconductor front? Because India is very focused on that,
right.
As well as the startups.
So on the semiconductor field, as I said, I was insinuating that there was some news already out in the Indian press, but I don't want to say it officially before it's announced, but we expect big news when it comes to semiconductors in the coming days because we have something in the pipeline.
Just give us some news if that's there.
Well, I cannot put the carriage in front of the horses. There are some private sector people that are initiating this. That's their role. They're going to announce it. But the trend is very clear. We are going to see a lot of movement there. And another field that we want to promote is the whole issue of sourcing. So that can be relevant both for the innovation sector, but also for the traditional sector. India wants to attract companies to produce here. I was already approached by several Israeli companies that are interested in producing in India, and here we have to see how it could work. It's in the past, and I think it's a situation prevalent today. A lot of Israeli entrepreneurs are sourcing their products in China. Okay, the Chinese have some advantages that have to do with logistics, with hubs of production, and the question is how this shift is going to take place and what India has to offer in this regard. We are working with economic bodies that have experience in this, like the Israel-Asia Chamber of Commerce in Tel Aviv. They are very knowledgeable, and usually they are working through agents or mediators that are actually mediating the Indian environment into the Israeli entrepreneurs. What we would like to see in the future is that Israeli entrepreneurs feel comfortable to work without mediation. Come here, visit production hubs, do the business directly. So there is a gap that still we have to narrow before we can really enjoy what India has to offer in terms of labor, in terms of production capacity and things like that. And this is something that I will have to dive into in order to, as I said before, to untap the potential that exists.
Mazda, as you mentioned in this answer, that you are preparing for a shift. So can we understand that now Israel is more willing to invest in India than China? Because we are the competitors here in the Asian sphere.
Yeah.
So what do you understand from your statement?
Well, the nature of our relations with China wasn't necessarily in the context of investment. It was in the context of enjoying the manufacturing capability that the Chinese market could offer for those who want to import finished goods to the Israeli market. Because the Israeli market is a knowledge-based economy that is concentrated mainly in exports of services and less in exports of finished products. Our traditional industries died decades ago. And we actually develop IP, develop patents, and then we go and produce in other countries. So the question is, to what extent we will be able to produce here? There are some Israeli companies that are already doing that, but we want to expand that. And that will require investments, and that's what we want to promote.
So can we conclude that India is more preferred than China?
Well, I'm a diplomat, but it goes without saying. The bonds that unite, that bring together India and Israel are unique. First of all, because of the common history, both the Jewish people and the Indian people have been subject to invasion of empires 2,000 years ago and before. We were invaded by the Greeks just as you were. And we maintain the capability to keep our heritage and our identity despite thousands of years of invasions of empires. We have in common, as I said before, the principles of freedom, of moderation, of accepting the other. Many things bond us together, and we have an excellent relationship that is, and the best symbol of that is the very good relationship between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the partnership they have created years ago when they exchanged visits, and we are following that lead. We've been benefiting from this relationship a lot, and we have natural friendship that I feel very warmly since I arrived here from the Indian people. And I'm grateful for that, and I'm looking forward in engaging with the Indian people, because at the end of the day, this connectivity is between people.
Though Mr. Modi is very visible that he visited Israel and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Do you see this chemistry between Modi and Netanyahu also working in favor of the relationship in a big way? Or because of the political situation now in here and also in your country, do you think this continues to remain robust?
Of course. The prime ministers have spoke only lately in the last few weeks. This relationship is continuing all the time, and we feel the warmth of this relationship, thanks also from the wind that is coming from, up to the bottom, and everybody feels that in the government. Just one example of that. Just last week we had our transportation minister here. She met with 4 Indian ministers. We feel that the doors are open here for us, and I hope that this is a mutual feeling.
Now, sir, I'll shift my focus to the strategic questions, sir. First of all, do you see any role of India in the conflict resolution, the conflict which is going on between Israel and Palestine? And because recently there is a lot of talk about India mediating in Russia-Ukraine crisis, because India shares good relations with both sides. Mm-hmm. Slightly similar is the case in this part of the world as well. So do you think that you will use India's strategic autonomy or independent foreign policy for any kind of a mediation or any kind of a role?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, this will be up to India to decide. I think that the increasing importance of the global role of India is obvious, and it's starting to manifest itself also in the Middle East. We can see it not only in the great relations between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu and the cooperation and the strategic partnership that is happening, but also in the initiative that we've seen in the last year of the great bonds between India and the UAE, and the way that they have been concluding so many agreements that will allow India to connect better to the Gulf, which is also in itself a hub that connects the East and West. So that is very important, because at the end of the day, all the countries that are partners in the Abraham Accords are working under more or less the same basis, which is we want to create stability and prosperity. We want together to fight extremism. We see a need to work with partners in the world, especially the United States, in order to stabilize the region, to be able to do trade safely, and this is being challenged now a little bit by the Houthis in Yemen and by other proxies of Iran. We want to be in a situation which we can create an understanding how to defend these assets together. So all this cooperation we're having on the table, under the table, will, at the end of the day, create the setup that will allow us to flourish in the future. And we are very happy that India is part of it, that India actually joined the initiative that President Biden announced during the G20. And we have a lot of work ahead of us in order to make it happen.
But sir, do you think that IMEC is taking off? Because it was a great announcement that big headlines were made, but then unfortunate incident has happened. And do you think that there's a break on the project currently? Right now we are not seeing it moving fast.
Right. Well, look, we have to be realistic. At the end of the day, the interest is there. And despite this conflict that was basically forced on us, this savage attack by Hamas terrorist organization and other terrorist organizations that were actually intended not only to inflict damage and to do all these atrocities like rape and mutilation, terrible things, they were intended also to undermine this scheme of stability and prosperity. So, when you compare this conflict to what we had 20 years ago with the Second Intifada, you can see that Arab countries actually haven't disconnected their diplomatic ties with Israel, because they understand that at the end of this conflict, when Hamas is completely destroyed, okay, we will have to go back to the things that we want to accomplish together. And what this conflict also showed is that despite this aggression that we are seeing from Iran and this unprecedented attack of more than 300 drones and missiles and towards Israel, the scheme we have created in the Middle East allowed us to foil this attack. So the fact that you are having cooperation between the Israeli Air Force, the Air Force of the United States, Britain, France, coordination with Arab countries in defending their skies from the Iranian threat, that is very important. And this is completely unprecedented and gives me huge optimism that when this conflict is over, and we hope that it will be over as soon as possible, we will be able to re-engage in creating these schemes of cooperation.
Well, what specifically do you see for IMEC? Like, as you said, there are realistic challenges in front of you, but where do you see it going now? Because critics are saying that it was just, it's just a notional thing. It can't happen.
Look, economic interest flows like water. They go to the easiest place in which they can flow into. At the end of the day, the economy will talk, because you have many ways of connecting Asia to Europe, India to the Eastern Mediterranean. And the question is, who is going to create the easiest flow? So of course there is the water flow through Bab el-Mandab and the Suez Canal. This is going to remain the main conduit for merchandise. But the idea of IMEC was creating an alternative that will complement, not replace, the current ways of trade. At the end of the day, it's a matter of economic need. When you need to send merchandise fast, it might be faster to send it through land, whether it be by trucks or later by train. When you have a problem because something got stuck somewhere or there is a conflict, then you can use the complementary way. So the idea is not to reinvent the wheel. At the end of the day, the idea is to create connectivity. We want to create connectivity not just by sending merchandise, by connecting fiber cables, by creating connection with flights, by creating connections through energy and green energy. So in order to achieve that, you need stability, because what businessmen hate is risk. What they hate is conflict. So we have to create a safe environment. And right now, the safest corridor that we are seeing in the Middle East is the corridor created by the countries that are interested in fighting extremism and promoting moderation and creating economic prosperity. And this is the link between the countries of the Gulf, the countries that have signed peace with Israel, like Egypt and Jordan, Israel itself, and the partners in the Eastern Mediterranean, in the European Union, the United States, India, and other countries. So it is obvious that we have an opportunity here. We just have to be consistent about fighting the extremists and fighting the terrorists. And India, knows very well about that. And this is something that also brings us closer together. The fight against terrorism, which unfortunately we know too well.
Coming to this fight against terrorism, we saw a terrible attack called 26/11, in which Israel has also lost their lives. A lot of Israelis were also targeted in Mumbai, the Mumbai attack. We saw a hand of a state, a neighboring state, Pakistan, in it. Is there any kind of a cooperation or arrangement which India is looking with Israel to counter cross-border threats? Because I think you are also facing similar situations like we are facing from several of our borders. So in this aspect, on countering terrorism, state-sponsored terrorism, how do you cooperate with India?
Well, we are cooperating in many ways. Most of the ways that we cooperate, we are not announcing it to the terrorists so they know what we do. So we have to be prudent about it. We have to be responsible about it. But rest assured that it is happening. The question is whether beyond the security cooperation and the intelligence cooperation, we can also create a diplomatic effort to really isolate the terrorists. And here I think we have a great challenge because sometimes we are outnumbered, most of the times we are outnumbered in the UN and in other international fora by countries that are actually afraid of terrorists. The question is how many countries we are going to convince to join us in this effort to really isolate both the terrorists and the perpetrators, those countries that are sponsoring terrorism, because they should be isolated and not us.
So is there any move on this?
Well, we'll see. We have to see who is going to take the lead on that. I think we are grateful for the support that India has given Israel since the 7th of October with a clear moral stand that India took, condemning the terrorist attacks of the 7th of October and also defending the right of self-defense of Israel. We share the values of acting according to international law, and this is something that we are communicating also, in current reports that we give to the Indian government about this issue, because we know it's important for India. And I believe that time will come in which we will be able to also have initiatives in this regard and not only be on the defense.
Sir, coming to the conflict now, where do you see it going now? Because another anniversary is there, and we see a lot of loss of human lives.
Yeah.
So how is Israel as a responsible state going to bring down this conflict, and do you think there can be a de-escalation or a kind of a ceasefire we are looking at?
So first of all, yes, the situation is very tragic, and we lament any loss of life, whether it be Israeli or Palestinian. This is really tragic because, what the terrorists are doing is that they are abusing any norm in the book, any law that was written by humanity in order to achieve their goal. They are using ambulances to transfer terrorists. They are using hospitals as headquarters for their terrorist activities. They are actually taking over international organizations like UNRWA, for example, that is employing 13,000 people in the Gaza Strip, and at least 2,000 of them are registered Hamas terrorists. Okay, so it's a huge challenge when they use civilians as human shields, when they are actually stating that they want to get attention from the world by actually having their civilians dead. So this kind of mentality is really something that is very difficult to deal with. And what the IDF has been doing, by the way, pretty brilliantly, it has been removing slowly but systematically the terrorist infrastructure from the underground of Gaza, hundreds of kilometers of tunnels, from all these installations in hospitals, in schools that cannot be impugned when they are being used by terrorists. And we've been killing about 15,000 terrorists of Hamas and other terrorist organizations. This is something that is going to take time. That, of course, we want to finish it as soon as possible. But at the end of the day, if Hamas is not completely defeated, we won't be able to bring back our hostages. Hamas will regroup and rearm time and again, and they already stated that they want to attack Israel like in the 7th of October time and again. So we have to be very responsible about it. And that's why our Prime Minister, for example, has stated that he will not allow a complete withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, especially not from the corridor, the border between Egypt and the Gaza Strip, because we don't want to see more contraband of weapons. We don't want to see Hamas rearming. So all these dilemmas we have yet to grapple with. This is an effort that is going to take time. And you can compare it what the terror attacks that we had in the beginning of the century, the year 2001, when suicide bombers were killing almost 1,000 Israelis in the Palestinian Authority territory, and it took us years to deal with it. So I don't know how longer this effort will require, but you can rest assured that we are determined as Israelis to fight the terrorists. We understand that without eliminating the Hamas military capability, we won't be able to enjoy stability and prosperity in the long term, and we have nowhere else to go. So I think the IDF is doing a good job. We have to be patient with that. And of course, we would be very happy if tomorrow Hamas would decide to release the hostages and get into a deal. There is a diplomatic path that was both approved by the United States and by the UN Security Council, which actually we approved as well. And, you know, the irony about it is that we've been negotiating with ourselves, mainly, with our partners. But Hamas hasn't really, so far, seriously negotiated this. I think they believe that they can, you know, sort of outweigh us, but this is not going to happen. And despite the pressures that they are creating through all these propaganda channels like Al Jazeera and others that are trying to concentrate on the loss of life as an excuse for them to survive in the Gaza Strip, this is not going to work. We are going to continue acting according to international law. We're going to continue targeting only military targets. We would prefer a situation in which Hamas doesn't use Palestinians as human shields, but this is not going to stop us from defending ourselves. So there is some tough work yet ahead of us. We've been doing a lot in degrading the Hamas capabilities, but we need to continue until we finish the job.
Thank you, Ambassador, for sparing time and giving us the detailed interview. We look forward for more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.